All right, got something that I think is rather cool. Anyways, I'm curious what other people think, but I just recently, a couple weeks ago, like a couple weeks ago from the date of this video, so like mid June of 2020, just got this Hobart Ironman 240 welder. A buddy of mine got one of these and was really happy with it, and it was just a screaming price on it, as far as I was concerned, anyways. It was like $1,600 through CyberWeld. Um, and nowadays, Hobart is the neutered version of the Miller um, products. So, like, you know, this welder here is similar to the Millermatic 252. Doesn't have some of the nicer, fancier features. Doesn't have the digital display, and it doesn't have the 10 pin connector on the front of it to like run a 38 spool gun or something like that. Which I actually didn't know at first. I didn't know that the Millers came with the connections on the front of it to be able to directly connect in one of the 30A spool guns. Um, so, um, I guess I should have gathered my thoughts before hitting record. But so yeah, for the price, I really like what this is. Yes, you can get the Hobart spool gun that plugs into the MIG gun connection, and I guess that kind of brings up a point that this uses standard Miller drive rolls on it, and it uses a standard Miller gun connection on it. Which is slick just to keep things the same and what have you. Because I have a number of, well, not that many, but I do have multiple Miller MIG welders and MIG guns, so I wanted something that was compatible. Evidently, so I'm told, the Ironman 240 is the only one of the Hobart welders that takes the same Miller MIG gun connection. Evidently, the smaller welders take a different connector altogether. And I have a bunch of Bernard centerfire consumables, and I have a bunch of these Miller drive rollers that fit the suitcase. Um, Kitty, gonna go fuck some shit up. But so that was important to me to keep things the same. But then once I learned about the fact that the Miller 252 has got the 10 pin on the front of it to run the spool gun off it, I got kind of ticked off because I was like, well, shit, maybe that was enough of a reason for me to, get the Miller versus the Hobart. However, I was talking to Miller and my local weld repair guy and what have you. That from talking with them, you cannot run a 12 RC suitcase just plugging it into a Miller 252 welder. To run a 12 RC suitcase that has the 14 pin connector, and to run it off of a Miller machine in like stock form, if you will. My understanding is that it has to be a inverter engine drive, like it won't run off a Bobcat or what have you, or something like a Miller XMT, which the inverter engine drives are basically a generator with a built-in XMT. But anyways, so kind of, I guess, wrapping back up here. Like I said, I know you can get the Hobart spool gun that plugs into where the MIG gun goes, but then that's kind of annoying. You have to take the MIG gun out, plug the Hobart spool gun in there, and also then it is not automatically compatible with my Trailblazer 325. Which is the thing that I currently run my 12 RC suitcase off of. I want to get a Spoolmatic 30A spool gun, and then I can use the Miller 14 pin connector with one of the WC24 weld controls and run the 30A off of here. But I already have the 12 RC suitcase, and it would be really handy if I could run the 12 RC suitcase off of here, just for any time that it would be difficult to get this thing close to where you're wanting to weld. Because, you know, you only got like a 15-foot MIG gun on the end of it, which, not to get totally distracted, but I guess brings up something else here. I'm going to try not to get too far off in the weeds, but we'll see. And something that I want to bring up and talk about, I guess. So the gun that the Hobart welder comes with is one of these. You know, it's, I don't know, I guess if you will, a budget gun. Works just fine, nothing wrong with it. I know my local weld supply stocks these switches here, so that's pretty cool. But this comes with the standard, if you will, like slip-on nozzle. So the nozzle here is just like a press fit onto this collar here. I don't know what this is called actually. But I really don't like these, this nozzle design. And it takes the small thread-in contact tips. And I guess the way this would go on the end of the MIG gun is that this guy, like this end here would be towards the MIG gun itself, and then this end here where you're welding, this threads onto the end of the MIG gun, and then this actually goes on the inside contact tip on the inside of there, and then the nozzle over the whole shebang, and you're supposed to just kind of crank the nozzle on there. I find it to be a pain in the ass when they're brand new. They're fucking tight as a German virgin, and by the end of it, they're fucking, you know, so worn out and slopped out. They're looser than $2 whore, and the nozzle kind of just like falls off the end of it, and I just, not my cup of tea. Also, the contact tips for it are very small, and they don't last very long, and it's just personal preference, you know, Glock versus 1911 guy or something like that. What I found, though, is that you can actually put the Bernard centerfire on the end of this MIG gun. You do have to cut down the end of the gun a little bit. And got some wire and a contact tip. You do have to cut down the end of the MIG gun a little bit, but then this way you can go to the Bernard centerfire stuff, which I think is much better. And the contact tip for the Bernard centerfire just slips right in the end of it, and then the nozzle just screws on the end like so. And say if you want a flux core weld, with this setup here, no worries, just take the nozzle off, and you know, you just have the contact tip sticking out of the end. This one here, the nozzle is what, you know, holds the contact tip in place. So you can cut down one of the MIG nozzles. I've done that in the past. But Bernard, for the small size here, they sell this little like flux core tip holder, if you will. And so there's a plastic insulator that goes on the outside of it that just I ordered, just hasn't showed up yet. But you know, there you go. Nice small little compact setup for if you're wanting to flux core weld. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that you can put the Bernard centerfire on the gun that the Hobart comes with. But so kind of getting back to it here. Like I said, I want to be able to run my suitcase in the shop without having to run the Trailblazer. And I also want to get a Spoolmatic 30A spool gun. Oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. The Bernard has flux only guns that have a flexible gooseneck on the end of them, which is neat. And then they don't have a gas line through them and all that kind of shit because they're only flux guns. And those take the Bernard centerfire, and the Miller 30A spool gun you can order with either like the Bernard quick tip, I think it is, or the Miller quick tip or whatever, or the centerfire contact tip. So just, I'm trying to keep everything the same here. And kind of coming full circle here, maybe. So yeah, I want to be able to run the suitcase in the shop. And the 12RC suitcase is kind of unique in the sense that it does not have contacts for the weld current. So like your weld cable here runs just straight to the block on your drive mechanism here, and then straight out to the end of the gun. There are no contacts on the inside of the suitcase, and the only thing that this suitcase is a wire feeder and a gas valve and nothing else. And these run off of 24 volts AC off of the Miller 14 pin, and I guess I'll show that here right quick. So got the voltmeter and got the 14 pin. The two wires that we're going for here in the 14 pin are the A and G. I'll fire it up here in a second. You won't be able to hear me, but I'll go between full throttle and low idle. The Miller manual says that it's 24 volts DC, but it actually varies between like 28 and 18 or something like that. But yeah, so I'll stick the multimeter in there. So that's what powers the gas valve and the drive roll, and the display on the front of the suitcase here is 24 volts AC. And so that's really slick, because then that's really easy to come up with. You know, I can very easily get a transformer to give myself 24 volts AC to be able to power the suitcase, and just have, you know, like a Miller 14 pin right here or something like that. And then some of the other wires in the 14 pin here are the contactors, or the weld output contact switch. I don't know what Miller calls it actually, but essentially to tell the welder to turn on and off. Like turn on and off the weld output, because like I said, this doesn't have any way of controlling the weld current, like no contactors in here. So on the suitcase setup, when you pull the trigger, you tell the welder to output weld current. When you let go of it, you tell the welder to stop weld output. So because there's wires for that in the 14 pin cable, I can just easy enough make myself a little adapter to where I could just screw into this connector on the front here. But I don't have any of that set up right now, because as of right now, I'm just trying to test a theory, see if this will work. So yeah, we just got to give this 24 volts AC, and then it turns on and everything's happy and everything's cool. And then hopefully you can see here, I've got the weld current cable coming over to the Hobart here, and just on a connector right into the machine there. And I'm going to try welding with the suitcase, but the suitcase weld current being powered by the Hobart, which is kind of interesting, because then it kind of turns the 12RC into like the 12VS version, in the sense that now you have to adjust your voltage here on the machine, and then you only have wire speed on the suitcase. And I suppose I could probably set it up for remote voltage, but I'm not too worried about that. But anyways, so I'll fire up the Trailblazer. The Trailblazer is only powering the circuit boards in here, the drive roll and the gas valve. The weld current is going to be coming from the Hobart. And the way that I am triggering the Hobart at the moment is just simply that I'll have the Hobart gun in my one hand here, just turn the Hobart on and off, and then I'll have the other MIG gun coming off the suitcase here will actually be, you know, starting and stopping the drive roll. So we'll try this out. Suppose it's noteworthy to say too, I have 023 hardwire short circuit MIG 7525 gas, and I suck at short circuit. I just have very, very minimal experience with it. So if it looks like I don't know what I'm doing, it's because I sure as fuck don't. Okay, so got the Trailblazer running only for the purpose of powering up the suitcase. You can see here that if I squeeze the trigger and feed out some wire, it's not doing anything because the power is not coming from the Trailblazer. And I suppose it's noteworthy too that I am in a stick setting at the moment, so that way the Trailblazer doesn't try to rev up when I pull the trigger. Now I have to also have the other Hobart MIG gun. This MIG gun here goes to the Ironman 240, and all this is doing is turning on and off the weld current as such. So you can see I'm not feeding wire, I'm just turning on and off the weld current. But if I hit them both at the same time, so I think that's kind of neat. So I guess just to illustrate here again, that this is only the wire feed. And this one here is the power supply, or weld current. And so if I get a 24 volt AC power supply and put a 14 pin connector on the front of the Hobart here, and wire up the contact wires and that kind of thing, then I could have the MIG gun, like the original MIG gun, stay connected on the front of the machine here, and then just like I have here, have the lug connectors just the same as you would have on an engine drive, and then I could just fucking plug my suitcase or my spool gun into this thing and use this to power the same spool gun and suitcase that I use out on the road. And I suppose to say here too that I've turned the wire feed speed all the way down and then just simply lifted or taken the tension off of the machine's drive roll so that it's not feeding wire. And yeah, so now I'll order some parts as far as like 24 volt AC transformer and a 14 pin connector and a couple other bits and bobs, and see if we can do this setup a little nicer here, a little cleaner. And just because I'm a dork here, check out this sweet ass old Victor regulator here, and I don't know why they ever stopped doing this shit, but the cubic foot markings on the gauge here is pretty handy. So 2200 psi, roughly 250 cubic foot, which on a K-size tank is about 250 cubic foot. I just really wish that we could go back to the, days where shit was made like this. And this is one of the older ones that's made in the US. Yeah. Because you can still buy basically these things today. But they're made in Mexico, and a piece of actual glass on the front of the gauge, and all brass and everything. I just really, really like the old stuff like that. I was saying that, like, modern Hobart is just a neutered Miller. Well, this Hobart here was back in the day where they made their own stuff, and they were some pretty serious machines. Mind you, this one here is very small and cute. They did have some quite large ones. Yes, it's a horrendous paint job, and it makes me think of, I love gold every time I see it. But 24 volt starting setup, it actually back feeds through the generator head. It does not actually have a starter motor on it on these Wisconsins. This is where the starter motor would go. But nice old school oil bath air cleaner. Little Wisconsin TJD. I don't remember the model number, but 2-cylinder Wisconsin on it. Old DC generator Hobart welder. And then also got a Westinghouse Air Brake Company air compressor. We can find the fucking tag. 1947. And I'll figure out a way that I can get a tool in there to measure the inside of the tank. But if you just simply, reach your fingers through here, it feels like the side of the tank there is like 3/8 of an inch thick. But yeah, freaking, it's actually a cast iron air filter, and you can kind of see it. It's got a cast brass head on the compressor pump. Once we get these things all set up, I'll show a video of these guys as well. This thing's actually got cloth wrapped wire on it. Not that that should really be any surprise to anybody. And the sweet old school little oiler caps. Yeah. Anyways, that's old Hobart. That's the, that was back when shit was very, very overbuilt. And the amperage on these things is really cool. You have like your steering wheel, which is your coarse current adjustment, and then inside the center here is the fine current, or, well, it just says fine adjustment. Yeah, cool old stuff.